Hello, my name's Edward Hawkins and I'm a bass, and this is the first of our 4 sessions together. And the title of this session, or the main thrust of it, is breathing. It came up in a lot of your feedback as to what you'd like sessions on, and it's very fundamental to everything, so it's a great place to start. We're going to chat about it briefly, and then we'll have some exercises which have really formed my, if you like, psychology of breathing. I'm a great believer in finding the natural way of doing these things. I think when we try and breathe for singing, we're sort of taking command of a process which is subconscious for 95% of the rest of our day. And that can come with some problems because when you hear someone, especially someone who's singing loud, and those of you in the bass section, you'll know that that feeling of the heft that people want in the sound of a good bass section and in a good bass voice. And you will have heard, I'm sure, lots of info from the other singers if you've watched their sessions. But as a bass, I definitely found that it was a lot to do with how do I get my voice to sound big, and how do I get to sing for a long time without getting tired. And so the word strength would immediately sort of pop up in my brain. Strong breathing and strong use of strong air. But I just want to sort of disabuse us of that idea and try and maybe use a bit of analogy to say why. So let's say you give a cricket bat to a professional cricketer and another cricket bat to the world's strongest man, and you throw a ball for them to hit. Which one of them is going to hit it further? We might think, well, assuming they both hit it, you might think, well, they both go the same distance, but the professional cricketer is far more likely to hit the middle of the bat, hit the meat of the bat, and use their technique to send the ball flying. Whereas the world's strongest man may hit it at maybe an equal distance, I don't know. But the effort involved, as opposed to the technique involved, would mean that it's a less efficient process for the same result, let's say. So to take that analogy one step further, if you're in the Albert Hall and you give a professional violinist a violin and a bow, and you give a violin and bow to the world's strongest man, and say, well, which one do you think will play the loudest? And not the nicest, the loudest. Well, you would, even then, when you were just talking about volume, you would probably think, well, the professional violinist will be able to play louder than the world's strongest man. And think, well, why do I automatically know that that's probably the case? Well, it's because deep down we know that the violinist can do it better because they can get the most out of the violin, by which I would mean their use of the bow gets the most resonance out of the string, and therefore that resonance is amplified by the violin. I'm sure you see where I'm going with this, but it removes the idea of strength being the ideal and training your breathing muscles to be strong, and then you'll be a good singer. And it becomes far more about efficiency and an efficient contact. In this analogy, of course, the breath and the breathing apparatus down here would be the bow of the violin, and the vocal folds here would be the string which resonates. And then if you wanted to stretch it further, all of this and your mouths forming the words, that would be like the body of the violin, or having you get a good violin that makes the most out of the resonating string, if you like. So I hope I haven't overloaded the analogy thing already. We have to talk in analogies because we're talking about muscles over which we don't always have direct control and which we use subconsciously. So a good analogy is worth 1,000 anatomy lessons sometimes as a singer. So I will use those kind of things. And if one of them clicks for you, then great. And if not, do watch the other sessions, because the other singers may phrase the same idea in a way which just makes you go, oh, like that. Okay, so let's talk briefly about the role of the chest and the lungs in breathing. I want you to try and imagine that your lungs are not involved actively. They are the containers of the air. So when you're breathing in, you're not thinking, I must fill up my lungs. They are just the containers of the air attached to a very nice, open, free chest. The reason I say that is because one of the best ways to introduce unnecessary tension into your singing is to feel like you're squeezing the air out of your lungs. And we don't want that at all. So if you're like, imagine that your lungs are a syringe being pushed up from the bottom, so that you don't squeeze a syringe from the sides, you keep it and you let the plunger at the bottom of the syringe do the work. So when you are singing, I want you to think, especially when you're holding a folder, you're always open. Use the fact when you're holding a folder that your elbows are out to encourage the ribs to stay out, so that when you breathe in and out, there's no sense of none of that, ever, 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 ever. Even when you're on your last drop at the end of an amen, you don't let your chest collapse. It's always. Now, hopefully you can see a bit of outward moving of my locked down tummy as I breathe in and out. And I would like you to try this as a way of breathing. It's called a splat breath. And SPLAT stands for Singers Please Lose Abdominal Tension. Anyway, here's how you do it. So you're upright and you are completely relaxed and your chest is open. And then what I want you to do is to breathe out all of the air in your lungs. So I'll do it for you. I'm going to just breathe out. Get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. Absolutely nothing left. Notice this hasn't collapsed. And then, when you can't stand it any longer, you just allow the air back in, like that. So, should we try it together? So, keep breathing out until you can really feel your abs and your other muscles starting to join in, like squeezing the last bits of toothpaste out of the tube. I'm still breathing out. Hold it for a second. And then you'll notice as you just stop holding it, that the air just floods back in. And the feeling is primarily one of this going and releasing and allowing air in. Not, a sort of active sucking in of the air or anything like that. So that splat breath, it might feel like just a funny little, oh, isn't that interesting how the air goes low? That is how you should try and breathe when you sing. Now, we're exaggerating it from the point of view of the exercise, but that's how I take a singer's breath. And it's a full breath, it's a relaxed breath, and it is a usable breath because it immediately connects me with the right muscles that are going to get rid of that air when I sing. So try that. The splat breath should be the only type of breath you do. The reason why it's important is because your conductor, when they bring you in, will not give you a splat breath. And they know that, and then deliberately showing you when they want you to come in, a conductor will breathe with their choir, but will often not take a singer's breath. They will take an obvious breath. So when they want the bassist to come in loud, they'll go, or whatever it is. They'll give you an obvious breath. But you, in the section, don't give your conductor back an obvious breath. Breathe properly, because the temptation is to go, I know what to do, I'm coming in right, you can trust me, sir, like that. And you show the conductor that you're going to come in so that they don't panic. Don't do that. Let your breath be a proper breath each time, being aware where the conductor is, eye contact, starting to sing. And that will remove so much tension from your singing, I promise. Just your breathing is for you. And don't be lured into taking a hugely active, very tense and very improper breath. Just a quick note about what's going on at the back of your mouth when you're singing. It's a real minefield technically, and we won't get onto this today, but when you've taken that nice yawning breath in, there should be a nice open feeling in the back of the mouth, and that will help you make a nice big sound. So it's kind of like the start of a yawn, or some people say it's a bit like a sort of the start of a sob or something like that. But here's a quick exercise which is hopefully helpful, because when I first started singing, I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to block off my nasal passage and just sing through there, or let some of the air go up into my nose. And this hopefully will help. So imagine that your back teeth are nice and separate. Not necessarily your front teeth, just focus on, and it's not really possible to do it, but focus on separating your back teeth. And then say this, hung as in hung from a tree, hyphenated to ah. So hung ah. All right, so let's try that now. Just say hung ah. And you'll notice when you say it, hung ah, you can feel the tongue and the back of the mouth, the soft palate, they separate from each other. Hung ah. Okay, so what I'd like you to just try and do is just go back into this feeling of a nice low breath. So the chest is up and relaxed and elevated. You've taken that nice low breath in, and then hung ah, and just try and sing on any note you like, hung ah, and that will give you a sense of, okay, well, my nose is involved when I'm not deliberately trying to sing up my nose. And then what I'd like you to try and do is just go hung ah, ha, ah. So that was hung ah, joined together, hung ah, then ha, and then ah, if you like, with a silent H instead of a glottal. Ah, see what I mean? So try those three. Hung ah, ha, ah. And aim for a similar feeling. So run the three of them one after the other in quick succession, and try and take the good stuff from hung ah and ha and bring it to that final ah. And you should feel like it's a nice way of starting a note. Have you noticed, if you're doing a lot of this splat breathing, that when you take that nice, so you get rid of all the air and then allow it back in, you should feel that the air coming in doesn't just feel like it's happening around the front of the tummy, but it feels like it's happening all the way around your back. So all the way around here as well, below the rib cage, even right round to your spine. You should feel it's all involved. So let's try one splat breath. And this time, instead of just allowing it in for a bit, let's go take a deeper breath. So you're going to breathe all the air out and then allow it back in, and just keep allowing. And you should feel no huge expansion here in the rib cage, but as you breathe in more, you should feel definitely an inflation around the back, if you like, the lower back. So the reason I want to highlight that is because we're now just going to try and bring those two things together in what's called an apoggia exercise. And we're just going to go ah, 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 and stuff like that. But we're going to take it slow, because we want to find this point of contact where the breath meets the vocal folds, if you like. When a violinist, and I'm not a violinist, uses their bow, the bow is already moving when it hits the string. They don't put it back on the string and then just go and start it. There is a sense of a bow in motion striking the string like that. And that's important because as a singer, we want that same feeling of the process of breathing comes to meet the start of the note, and it's already ready, instead of just going Gloria like that or something like that, which is lacking the necessary impetus and is a bit like a violinist just going like that with the bow. To a little exercise to try and get that sense. Let's say ama, so A-M-A, ama, like that. And then the first A of ama, we're going to gradually get rid of, just like we did with the H of ha. So ha became ah. We're going to go ama, 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 ma, until you're singing ma, but the air is already going as if there was a silent vowel just before it. Ma, instead of ma, that suddenly turns itself on, and it's too late. You've lost the nice impetus of the breath. So a nice breath in, and then ma with a silent A before it. Ma. Just the preparedness of the air makes for a better and more efficient sound, just like a better sound on a violin when the bow is already in motion when it prepares contact with the string. So now let's do this. I'm going to do it on a B flat. We're going to go B flat, D, B flat, like that. And we're going to do it as minims first, and then as crotchets, and then we can do it as quavers afterwards. So you're going to go on an R, ah, 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 ah. Just try that with me. Ready? Go. Ah, 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 ah. And all I want to be in your mind is the idea of I am concentrating on what the note feels like at the moment it starts. And singers spend years trying to train themselves so that even in a loud phrase, in a height of their register or the depths of the register, that they prepare the note to start correctly. Now just try a little experiment where you leave yourself the least time possible to breathe between the two. So you're going to go ah, 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 but don't get a like I was sort of overly demonstrating the first time. Ah, 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 ah. They are not slurred, and you're not going with a glottal. Like a violin bow. Like that. See what I mean? Just try that. See how that feels. Okay, so now let's try and go from minims into crotchets. Now crotchets. Quavers. Now semi-breathe. So we did minims, then we did crotchets, then we did quavers, and then we finished with, let's say, 2 bars, or as long as you can hold it, just on that last note. Okay, so quick final exercise and then some final thoughts just to wrap everything up. I want to talk about how one takes a breath and how it's affected by what you're about to sing. So let's sing Happy Birthday, for example. What I want you to do is sing Happy Birthday nice and slow. So we're going to go after 2. 1, 2. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right, stop. Now, what happens if I said, right, now I want you to sing it this fast. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay, so that will be happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. And I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, happy birthday. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Now, if you're in a choir, the temptation would be to be happy birthday and take a breath in that feels like it's snatched, if you like, or feels hurried because what you're about to sing is fast. I want you to try and avoid that at all costs. And it will be tempting if you're in the middle of quite a fast piece, and the conductor gives you an upbeat which is very energized. Your breath in does want to be, does want to have energy to it, but it must not be rushed. And if you know your music well enough, you should never feel like you have to go like that and start singing like that. because it goes against this idea of the breath always being ready. Now, of course, a violinist can go, but every time they do a down bow, let's say, as you can see, not a violinist, the violin will always try and do a quick version of a good bow. It's never like, oh my God, it's never out of control. So think about that. Think about how you breathe when the music is fast. Are you tensing up unnecessarily, or are you still 1, 2, 3, happy birthday to you, happy birthday? Do you see what I mean? You're relaxed, and because it's happy birthday, it's easy. But if it's an entry in a fugue where you're not quite sure what you're doing, or you think it's now, and yes, I'm sure it is now. Oh, yes, it is now. Okay, go. All of that tension can find its way into your sound. So we talked a lot about one really overriding feature for me in this session, which is the point at which the breath becomes the sound. And there's loads more to do with breathing, and this is just one aspect of it. But for me, it has been crucial. Specifically as a bass, we always tend to forget there's a law of diminishing returns in singing. What I mean by that is there is a point at which, when you're singing, where you give more and you get less back, much like the world's strongest man trying to play a violin or hit a cricket ball. You're giving loads and loads of effort into your sound, and it will actually be less loud, and it will carry less, it will sound less full, and it will sound less impressive. And I really, if you take nothing else away from this session, it's that when you find the sweet spot, that's when your voice will be full and strong, and you will have stamina. You'll be able to sing for longer without running out of air. But it's to do with finding the sweet spot of beginning that note, if you like, in the middle of the bat, on the right part of the string, resonating fully, instead of something which your voice doesn't want to do. So I hope that's helpful. Please do check out the other singers' lessons, because they will all touch on different aspects of breathing, and in all of these different sessions we'll be doing different things. But I hope that's been helpful, and see you for the next one.